Sunday, we honored, well not honored, but we celebrated in one sense. It was just called the bittersweet celebration of the disappearance of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Of course, there's an old saying, and this was given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which was an inscription on the Samadhi Mandir of Srila Haridas Thakur. He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die. When thou art living, still and sound, Vaishnavas die to live, and in living spread the holy name around. So there is a correction there. Anyone who thinks that a pure spiritual person dies is wrong, because they just go from one place to another. What do they do? The same thing they do in wherever they are, spread the glories of the whole Lord and inspire others to take up the process of devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, of course, it appears from a certain point of view he did disappear, but he left us with a legacy. What is that legacy? His books. Therefore, Prabhupada used to say, if you want to associate with me, when he was asked that question, how can we associate? He said, read my books. I'm in my books. And Prabhupada would explain that these Bhaktivedanta purports, which he penned under such, what we might say, difficult circumstances. It was the time when everyone else was resting. Prabhupada would take rest in the evening, anywhere between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. I'm sorry, between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, and then he would wake up around 12:30 and then begin his Bhaktivedanta purports or translations. Prabhupada had the commentaries of all the great acharyas previously who had commented on Bhagavatam. Reading those purports by the acharyas, commentaries, he would add his own Bhaktivedanta realizations. And that became Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita purports. And Prabhupada, what we say, worked tirelessly to bring us an understanding of Krishna consciousness to the Western mind. He understood that the Westerners don't have the adhikari to understand deeply the science of Krishna consciousness. So presenting it with the realization of how the Western mind understands and thinks, Prabhupada was writing his Bhaktivedanta purports. And you see, he uses a lot of ordinary language in these things to explain something very deep and very profound. Who is Srila Prabhupada? So most people have their own understanding, and usually it's all, what we say, limited. For Srila Prabhupada is not a person who somehow or other became a great soul, somehow took up spiritual life and became so powerful, he got lucky, and everything went in a certain direction, and then he became a great acharya. It's not like that. We have the history, and there is a statement from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. And this statement is by Sri Krishna himself. And the Lord is speaking to Ganga Devi, the personification of the Ganges River. And Krishna is saying to Ganga Devi, within the next 5,000 years, a personality will appear, and he will take the chanting of my name to all corners of the globe. He is my mantra upasaka. So Krishna speaks something 5,000 years ago, which was later written down in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, as a way to give us an understanding that soon a great personality will appear. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking to Sri Narada Muni, and he gives a similar statement, that there will appear a great personality. He will be known as my Senapati Bhakta, and people from different countries will flee, but he will chase them down and give them Krishna consciousness. You see, sometimes people come from India. They come from India to go to the West to, for the adventures of economic gain or some kind of material luxuries, whatever. And then there's Krishna. I tried to get away, but he didn't allow me to get away. So yeah, we find that a lot. So that was the second prediction, and the third one was by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Sajjanatoshini, where he writes that soon a personality will appear and will take Lord Chaitanya's movement to all corners of the globe. So we have these three prophecies all before the appearance of Srila Prabhupada, which really indicates that this personality who appeared is not just an ordinary soul, or even a great soul who became even greater. He was a Nitya Siddha. What is Nitya Siddha? Nitya Siddha means an eternal associate of the Lord who comes on the mission of the Lord to do the work of the Lord in the world. And that is to spread Krishna consciousness. We get a little insight of who Srila Prabhupada actually is. He's not just someone who has a lot of knowledge and a lot of devotion. When Srila Prabhupada was asked by one of his disciples, who are you in the spiritual world? Prabhupada was asked that question twice, two different occasions, and both times he responded differently. The first time he said, that you do not require. None of your business. And then the second time when he was asked that, he said, if I told you, you would faint. And Prabhupada knew who he was. He knew his eternal relationship with Krishna. He knew he came on this mission. And it wasn't something that, of course he never broadcast it, but there was indications that he gave us. For instance, one of his very close disciples was with him massaging Prabhupada, and it was just the two of them, and Prabhupada started to speak. Prabhupada would always like to speak about Krishna consciousness in any situation he was in. His mind was always thinking how to spread Krishna consciousness. He was always getting ideas on how to bring these teachings to different types of people in different places around the world. His mind was like focused on spreading Krishna consciousness always. Or speaking about the philosophy of Krishna. He was doing either one. But this time he was very quiet. And then he was being massaged by his disciple. And Prabhupada started to speak, just, you might say, out of the blue. And he spoke, he said, I was with Krishna in the spiritual world, and Krishna said, you go to the material world and preach. And I said to Krishna, material world, horrible place. Horrible place. Just in case you're not sure. Compared to the spiritual world, it's a horrible place. And so Krishna responded, no, you go, you write some books, and I'll protect you. So I came. Krishna wanted me to come. So he spoke then to a devotee, his name was Bhavananda, who was doing the service of massaging Srila Prabhupada at the time. Bhavananda told that story, and I was personally present when he spoke that story. So we get a little more insight about Srila Prabhupada. And so his books, as Prabhupada said, sometimes he would read his books. And you might think, well, what author reads their own books? How many of you have written books here? Anybody? You wrote a book. So you read it how many times after you wrote it? 2 times, just for editing purposes. You can sit over there. That way, you're one of the members now. Okay. Yeah, an author, when they write, they might read the book again just to go over it and just see if everything was right. But Prabhupada would read his books regularly. Sometimes he would sit with his devotees and he would read Krishna stories. And he would be reading something a little humorous in Krishna's pastimes, and he would be laughing. And then the devotees would be thinking, Prabhupada's reading his own books and he's laughing. But Prabhupada would pick up on their mind, and Prabhupada would say, Krishna is speaking, I am writing. Krishna is speaking, I am writing. So, in other words, Prabhupada was a channel or a medium for the voice of the Lord. And so when you read his books, they are not coming from only an intellectual and philosophical point of view. They're coming from the spiritual world. So Prabhupada wanted us to read his books. He wanted us to study his books. He wanted us to understand his books. And most of all, he wanted us to distribute his books also. Because he knew what he was giving. As Prabhupada also said, my books will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. In other words, if you need to know anything about spiritual life or about any kind of situation, you can read Prabhupada's books and you will find the answer. Or, if you want, you may also listen to his lectures. It's amazing what's in Prabhupada's lectures. I've been listening to the first canto of Srila Prabhupada's lectures for the last 2 years, just the first canto. I listen to all the first canto lectures, and then I go back and listen to them again. Each time I listen to them, it's like I'm listening for the first time. And what you find in there, each time you find something really interesting, relevant, and very timely. That's the holy name. I wouldn't do that with the holy name. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. You're okay. You don't look sick. So, if you want one of those things that people put on, what do they call those? Masks. He's got some here. He'll get you one of those. Yeah, because that's the holy name is for that. And I find by listening to Srila Prabhupada over and over again, I get so much more knowledge and amazing little things you don't hear each. And if you find, like I was fortunate to get the copy of the 1973 lectures unedited. Because what you get on the database, or what you get is available, is edited lectures. They cut it down for time. But I have the unedited version of the 1973 lectures. And it's amazing when you hear the whole thing. Some of those lectures are much longer than what we normally get. And then there's questions and answer periods, so sometimes they're not included in the edited version. So there's a lot of Srila Prabhupada's, what he gave us. He was tireless because he wanted us to understand this philosophy and understand this practice along with the philosophy, so we wouldn't be victimized by this material energy, and we could actually develop attraction and attachment for Krishna. So Prabhupada's books are like, as Prabhupada said, time bombs. So what's a time bomb? Is that you plant a bomb and then in due course of time it will go off, but no one knows when. And so probably just like you see, I'll give you an example. I was in Chicago. It was my base for so many years, from 1995 to 2012 or 13, I was there. So during the early part of that time, around there in the late 90s, one hippie person walked into the temple and he was looking for me. But the story is that his father was throwing out some of his, or not throwing out, but stacking some of his old books into boxes and taking it to bookstores to get a little remuneration for the book. And while he was doing that, he was carrying these boxes out, and on the top of the box was the Bhagavad Gita, on the top of the pile. So this boy, his son, saw it, and he said, "What is that?" So he took the book and he started reading it, and he became engrossed in the book. And he was really thinking, "This is amazing. I want to learn more." And then he was looking, but he couldn't find any reference in the book where the connection was with any organization. So one day he was walking along the street, and just so happened he met a book distributor, Krishna's arrangement. And he, after talking to the girl, she said, "Yes, we have a temple here in Chicago." She gave me the address. He came. He walked in. He came to see me. He sat down. He said, "Take me to New Vrindavan. I want to join." So I did. I drove him to New Vrindavan. After a while, he got initiated and became one of the gardeners in New Vrindavan. So just by reading Prabhupada's book for the first time and getting a little bit of association, he simply joined. That's how powerful these books are. Some people just immediately they resonate, and it just hits them at the right time, and they're ready. They're ready for Krishna consciousness. So these books are so powerful. And anything, Prabhupada said, whatever you want to know, it's in Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam includes all subject matters, not just philosophical, spiritual knowledge, or knowledge of Krishna in the spiritual world. But it has everything. It has science, it has geography, it has metallurgy, it has so many things. It's just a matter of what we say, carefully reading, and you'll find so many, many topics in Srimad Bhagavatam that you'll be surprised or even there. When we carefully read, we find so many amazing, amazing statements that, and it's interesting because each time you read, even if you read the same thing, and you read the same thing over again, the experience is like, this is the first time. This is the first time. It's so profound. And that's the nature of spiritual knowledge. It's not limited. Limited means within a certain range, you can exhaust whatever is available in terms of the knowledge given. But this knowledge is not like that. Shrutikirti Prabhu tells a story. He was Prabhupada's servant. He was with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada all of a sudden started talking. He said, "Just one page of nectar devotion, and you can become a pure devotee." One page. And then Prabhupada said, "No, one paragraph." And then he stopped and thought for a while. "No, one sentence." And then he said, "No, one word." So Prabhupada wanted to emphasize that these books, this knowledge that is given, is called Aparushad. Aparushad means not man-made. It's coming from the Spirit. It's coming from Krishna himself, this knowledge. And that was Prabhupada's, what we say, glory. He was able to channel, we use that word, Krishna's message to the world as the medium to bring it in voice, in his personal presence, and in literary, distribution in his books. One time Prabhupada was with one professor, Professor Durkheim from Germany. Professor Durkheim and Prabhupada, they met for the first time. But Professor Durkheim really connected with Prabhupada in a very quick way. They were right on the same page, and Prabhupada was really opening up, and they were discussing like they were friends. And the devotees were also there, they were on a morning walk. So Prabhupada got really friendly, and then Prabhupada started talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said that, we have our Srimad Bhagavatam. He's explaining the knowledge that we get. And he said that there's 18,000 verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it takes 1 month to understand each verse. And so he turned to one of his disciples and said, "How long is that?" 18,000 verses times 1 month. And one devotee was really quick with math. He said, "That's 1,500 years." And Prabhupada said, "You have enough to read." In other words, It's not possible to exhaust this knowledge or even come close to exhausting it. Just for example, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Let me see. Parikshit, you ready? What, can you recite the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Tvam Nidhya. Beautiful, perfect. Not only did he get it all right, but that was nice melody. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj spoke on that verse for 3 months. There was no purports, just the verse. He spoke on that verse for 3 months in a place called Dhaka, which is now West Bengal, or I'm sorry, East Bengal. And not covering the same points each of the days, just expanding the knowledge just on that one verse for 3 months. That's an example how a great soul can, go deeper and deeper into this knowledge and extract so many powerful, more and more meaning. So when we like to read or we like to gain knowledge in an area, well, why not become proficient in spiritual knowledge? Learn this knowledge, read Prabhupada's book, study it, discuss it amongst bodhiyantas parasparam kathiyantas chimam nityam tushyanticha ramanticha. Now Krishna gives the formula. Devotees come together and they discuss my pastimes and activities, and they derive great pleasure and satisfaction in doing so. This is Krishna consciousness. And so Prabhupada gave the world this great gift of Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course all the other Vedic literatures that he also presented, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita purports, outstanding. They're like pictures. It's so deep. Bhagavad Gita purports, so precise. The Bhagavatam is a little bit less precise in its flow of knowledge, because Prabhupada uses a lot of examples from different places to illustrate the points of the verses. But you see, when you read Bhagavad Gita, it's so orderly, it's so step-by-step clear. And when you read one verse and the purport, it's like a picture is painted in your mind. And Chaitanya Charitamrita is the same thing, but it's much more deeper in the knowledge. So what we have been presented is actually, and this knowledge, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, is like a weapon. And what is that weapon? It cuts through the ignorance of the material existence and awakens transcendental knowledge. When knowledge is awakened, one is free. Because it says transcendental knowledge is the power that sets one free. What is that freedom? That freedom is that one is no longer affected by or disturbed by the material energy. And everybody is in the material world. The material world is creating so many, the 3 modes of material nature, working on everybody. But when you have knowledge, you refer to that knowledge and you can understand how each and every situation of your life, you can apply that transcendental knowledge and see the difference between being trapped by the material energy or being freed by that transcendental knowledge. And when you realize, of course, realization is the goal of this knowledge. Theoretical knowledge is the stage or a step towards realization. But through theoretical knowledge and the execution of bhakti, in other words, when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. We get realization of this knowledge. And that's the difference between reading the menu and eating the food. It becomes an experience, this transcendental knowledge. So this is Prabhupada's, one of his many, many gifts to the world. He wanted the devotees to read and study his books and distribute his books also, like that. It's a stage. In other words, when you read, what is the next step? You try to understand. When you try to understand, then you get a little bit of an understanding, and then you try to apply that in your life. When you apply it, then realization comes. And when realization comes, what is the next step? You develop transcendental qualities and transcendental skills. In other words, you become proficient in the execution of devotional service. And this is how the knowledge works from one stage to another. So, Prabhupada wanted us, he worked tirelessly to bring these books to us. And as described by many devotees, that, there was a time when nobody else was awake. Everybody was sleeping, they had worked the whole day. Prabhupada was up from 12:30, sometimes even earlier, to about 4 in the morning, just spending precious hours just giving us the Bhaktivedanta purpose. And sometimes it's understood that Prabhupada would come across a particular purport and commentary, and he would take 1 or 2 days just to give that purport. He wanted it so precise, like that. That was Prabhupada. And he worked like in the wee hours of the morning when everybody was sleeping so he could have complete concentration. There's one time Prabhupada was in India, and he was doing his Bhaktivedanta purport in the middle of the night. He rings his bell, his servant sleeps outside the door. And when the servant hears the bell, he runs inside. So the servant came running in, and then he sat down waiting for Prabhupada's instructions. Prabhupada said, "You hear that?" And the servant said, "I don't hear anything." Prabhupada said, "Listen, you hear that?" "What?" "You hear that noise? Find that noise and stop it." The devotee didn't know. And finally Prabhupada said, "Click, click, 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 click." There was a fan somewhere. In India, you've been to India, right? Fans go click, 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 click. So that noise was there. It was a distance away, but Prabhupada could hear it. "Stop it." So the devotee, searched out the noise. Finally he found it and shut off the fan. And so that's how Prabhupada wanted that time for himself, that complete concentration, no other sound. That's why he chose the wee hours of the morning to do that work. And then, Prabhupada, what was his schedule? And Prabhupada would sometimes explain. He went to bed between 10:30 and 11, get up at 12:30, 1 o'clock, sometimes a little earlier, and just write for 3 or 4 hours. Then he would chant japa for a while. And then he would connect with his devotees, and he'd go on a morning walk. And the morning walk would start usually at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then he would walk to the temple. And he'd get there just in time for greeting of the deities at 7. He'd greet the deities, and then they would have Guru Puja, and then he would give Srimad Bhagavatam class, and then he would go back to his quarters. He would take a little breakfast, and then he would take a nap. Usually for about an hour, they say. And then when he would get up, he would have his massage right away. And sometimes 2 hours, Prabhupada would get a massage. And during that time, he would answer letters. The devotees would come in from the letters that the devotees sent in, and they would read to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, while he's getting massage, he would dictate the answers, and devotees would type it up and send out the letters like that. And then that would take sometimes up to a couple hours. And then Prabhupada would get ready for lunch, so he would take a shower and then get on a new set of clothes, and then he would have his lunch come in. And after lunch he would take another rest for another hour, and then he would get up and then he would perform his afternoon duties, sometimes meeting people, sometimes going to programs, sometimes just being with his devotees and giving darshan like that. So that was Prabhupada's schedule, every day like that. He was tireless. Try that, don't try that. sleep 2 hours at night, then 1 hour after breakfast, and 1 hour after lunch. You can't do it. The devotees were like, when Prabhupada would travel with the devotees, they would go from sometimes country to country, and they would land. All the devotees were like jet lagged. Prabhupada would just check the time, whatever time it was, and he would just connect with his schedule accordingly. There was never any jet lag for Prabhupada. And he would say, "You're all so young. Why are you getting tired?" But we couldn't keep up with Prabhupada. He was just like transcendental. There was a story where it's a little. Prabhupada was in Tittenhurst, John Lennon's estate in London, somewhere in the London area. And so his very dear disciple, Jamuna Devi, was there also. So Prabhupada really had a certain, what we say, connection with Jamuna. And Jamuna just loved Prabhupada. She got everything she ever wanted from Prabhupada. She was always around Prabhupada. When Prabhupada would give the lecture, she'd sit right in the front sometimes. And she's always there. And Prabhupada taught her how to cook. He taught her how to do harmonium, everything, Prabhupada. So one time, just the two of them, they were walking in Tittenhurst, in John Lennon's estate. It was early in the morning, and Prabhupada and her were walking. So at one point, Prabhupada started to walk ahead, and she was walking behind, and she was thinking while she was walking, I'm going to step in the same footprints he steps in. I'm going to follow in his footprints. So she's looking down on the ground, and she's looking for the footprints, and there's no footprints. She sees her own footprints, but she can't see Prabhupada's footprints. And she's bewildered. The ground it's soft and it's a little bit wet, but there's no footprints for Prabhupada. And then at one point she just had to ask. And she asked Prabhupada, I'm following you, and I see there's no footprints. Prabhupada said, that will be revealed later. And sometimes devotees would say when the Prabhupada would walk, he wouldn't touch the ground. They say when the demigods come to this planet, they don't touch the earth either. They walk above the earth. Sometimes devotees would even see Prabhupada not touching the ground when he was walking. He would walk fast. Ooh. Prabhupada would walk so fast, the devotees sometimes would have to run to catch up to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was not a person from this world. He came for this mission, and when he was finished with his mission, he went back to the spiritual world, and some say he simply went again to continue his mission in some other place in the universes. That's what Srila Prabhupada. He was a completely transcendental person. There was another story I was going to tell. Yeah. I forgot it. I just had it. Yeah, so we get a little insight. So when you're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, you know that these words are not just philosophical teachings that are coming by way of some intellectual ability. They're actually the words of Krishna being transmitted through a pure devotee of the Lord. And these books are so valuable. Prabhupada said, read my books. One time he was in Mayapur, he was chastising the devotees. He said, you're out on book distribution, and you're selling the books, and someone asks you, what's in the book? And you say, well, we don't know. Our teacher, he writes, and we sell. That's all. Prabhupada said, not like that. You have to know what's in the books. So when you're asked the question, or if you're asked to speak on any philosophical thing, you're ready, you're equipped, you can speak like that. That's what Prabhupada wanted. He didn't just want his books to look nice on the shelves with the different color covers, And every once in a while we dust it off. Read the books. These books are, and Prabhupada said, transcendental time bombs. Yeah. There's so many beautiful stories in the life of Srila Prabhupada which illustrates, I mean, what Prabhupada had to do to bring this movement, and what he did in 11 years is not only miraculous, it's impossible. In 11 short years, he spread Krishna consciousness practically to every country around the world. It was amazing how fast Krishna consciousness spread. Just like here in the United States of America, Prabhupada talks about how one government official, like one senator or congressman, I wasn't sure which one, he had said, and he made a public statement, if this ISKCON society continues to go the way it is, it will take over the government in 10 years. The movement was so powerful in the United States at one time. And the temples were opening regularly, books were going out, devotees were being made, and there was such an enthusiasm to spread Krishna. It was like a pandemic of spirituality. It was spreading fast. But somehow or other, Maya came in and somehow diverted the attention away. Maya is very strong. But then the emphasis shifted away from the United States and went around the world. And then India became the force. Just like now in India, we're practically all over India, we are respected as a very bona fide religious tradition. India has now, we're opening temples practically every year. A new temple is opening in India. We have support from so many government leaders, and even the president himself, Mr. Modi, is a very good friend and supporter of our movement. He's been vocal about that also. So yeah, but of course in other countries also it's spreading fast. So we got to get the United States moving again. It's been in a slumber zone for a while. So you're building this new temple. And it's not just a nice new temple, it's a way to attract the conditioned souls to Krishna consciousness. It should be done with that idea in mind. And how can we attract these conditioned souls? Because right now people are lost, I mean really lost. And a lot of people are looking, just like during this last year and a half I've been in Slovenia. So we've been doing Harinam and book distribution practically every day during the so-called lockdown. We defied the lockdown. We just went out anyway. And sometimes they'd say, well, you guys are not supposed to be here. Oh, we didn't know that. And then we come back the next day. Well, it happened 10 times, they told us. Well, finally, they got a little heavy. So then we had to just come out at regular times. So we were doing Harinam and book distribution simultaneously. And we were distributing between 100 and 200 books every day. I mean, people were just gobbling up the books like it was just like, pakoras or something. It was just so much. And it's there. It's not only in the area we were, but it's all around now. All you have to do is get out there and start, finding ways to distribute this knowledge and develop more and more programs. Because, as time goes on, the Krishna consciousness is supposed to increase. It's not that we get to a certain stage and we say, well, that was the young days, now I'm going to relax. I'll read a few books and chant a few mantras, and then I'll watch some videos. No, we have to stay very active in spreading this Krishna consciousness movement, because that's your ticket back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada said, anyone who spreads Krishna consciousness becomes recognized by Krishna. And Prabhupada said, if you're recognized by Krishna, then you're guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead. So that's the ticket to be Lord Chaitanya's mercy manifestation. And so these books are, powerful. They're very powerful. And we're seeing that people are interested. It's not like years ago we had to come up with many, what we say, very cute ways of trying to distribute books. But now I found it's more easier now. We just speak to people more direct, and they're more open to hear. Yeah. So this is one experience that I've seen, and other devotees are having the same. And of course, we can also do it online through through the viral media. Any way you can do it. And so build this temple and make it a grand project and work together in a cooperative way, because when people see that everyone is working in a cooperative way, it is very attractive. I mean, there's always differences of opinion on how to do things, but that has to be amalgamated in the higher principle. This is for Prabhupada, this is for Krishna, this is for spreading the message to the conditioned souls. That should be our focus. Personal interests should be pushed aside in order for higher interests. And there's where the unity comes. Unity comes on the higher principles or on the spiritual platform. And so it's glorious after so many years, you have this project. So everyone should contribute in some way or another to make the temple happen and to also be an instrument to spread the message of Krishna consciousness in different ways. And that's Krishna consciousness, you know. As Srila Prabhupada would say about himself. Prabhupada one time said, I want to retire at one point and go to Vrindavan and take 25 of my most advanced devotees and live like the Goswamis. And devotees were waiting for Prabhupada to happen. Prabhupada actually said, you know, that was an idea that Prabhupada had, but he never really wanted that to happen. He said, I want to die on the battlefield. I want to be there to spread Krishna consciousness to my last breath. And that was Prabhupada. And he did. Even when he was in his very debilitated physical state, and he was still speaking Krishna consciousness to his devotees and to whoever who would ever come to see him. He wasn't always talking about his health or anything. He was talking about Krishna. He was talking about Bhagavad Gita, talking about how to spread this movement. That was Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, he invested that inspiration in many of his disciples who have the same mood to use every moment to spread Krishna consciousness. Because when you give it, you get it. When you give it, you get it. That's how it works. Because it's not material. So when you give something material, then you give it away and it's gone. But that's not that. Spiritual doesn't work in that way. Spiritual is more, the more you give, the more you get. I mean, even from the material point of view, when devotees are in our movement, we have the example of one very wealthy devotee. He joined our movement. He was from India, very high-level entrepreneur. He had many corporations in different places around the world. He was quite wealthy. He joined the Hare Krishna movement, became really attracted, took initiation. Right, he met Prabhupada, but he didn't get a chance to take initiation from Prabhupada. So he took initiation from Prabhupada's disciple. And then what he was doing is that he was using as much money as he could. He was giving hundreds and thousands of dollars to various projects to build Krishna consciousness, especially in India and in other places also. And he describes, since I became a devotee, my business increased 8-fold. It's not like everything went down. Krishna said, oh, you're using your money for me? Here, have some more. Krishna says, you're using your time for me? Here, have some more time. You're using your intelligence for me? Have some more intelligence. You're using your life's energy for me? Here's some more energy. It works like that. And Krishna sees, oh, whatever you're using, it's for me. Here, have some more. Krishna empowers his devotees with whatever they give. He restores that and he builds it. This is Krishna. That's why you can see devotees can work tirelessly and at the same time feel happy. Why? Because it's Krishna. It's Krishna's doing everything behind the scenes. Yeah, it's like that. So again, just to repeat what I mentioned earlier, make this temple a grand, Prabhupada said Columbus. He said, this city, we can make the whole, I can't remember the exact statements, maybe some of you know, but Prabhupada made some statements about Columbus and spreading Krishna consciousness. I think he said something like this, we can make the whole city Krishna conscious, Columbus, something he said. In other words, he had a lot, when he saw in 1969, I think, or 68, yeah, when he came to that one building on campus, and there was 2,000 students had come to hear Prabhupada's lecture. And Prabhupada started kirtan, and the place exploded. Prabhupada said, you know, he was really impressed. He said, yeah, this place is, you know, it's got a lot of Shakti. So yeah, Ohio State campus, I don't know, when I was here, there was 55,000 students going there. Big unit, must be more than that now. So yeah, you have a whole area to preach in. And students, as Prabhupada said, students are our best candidates for Krishna consciousness. Of course, everyone is, but especially. So we have a great legacy given it to us by Srila Prabhupada. And we can say so much about Srila Prabhupada and how he spread his movement, but the essence was he wanted his devotees to read his books and understand this knowledge. And so we could be able to speak at any time with anyone on this philosophy, on this practice. Okay, so there's many things we could talk about. Srila Prabhupada is an ocean of transcendental knowledge, and Prabhupada also wanted us to develop farm communities to develop a more simple type of living style. I heard you have 55 acres of land for this temple. You could also use it for an agricultural place and invite families to build homes on the place, on there, and keep a few cows and grow your own food, keep cows, and live simply. And it'll cut down on all the economic efforts in order to live in the way we're living now. And at the same time, it brings devotees together in a more natural environment where it's easier to practice Krishna consciousness. When you're together, it's easy. When you're separated, then Maya finds so many ways to keep us, you know, separate. Just like this lockdown. This lockdown is one of the worst things you could possibly, because that cuts devotees off from devotees. Stay together. Have sanghas as much as you can. Even if you can't come in person, stay on the viral, but coming together and chanting and dancing and discussing and hearing for Krishna conscious knowledge inspires devotees in their devotional service. And we find so many ways on how to practically apply whatever we need in life. And this community is the foundation for the success of Krishna consciousness. You have a nice community, but find different ways to bring it closer together. Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Srashti Hoy, Labhamata, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Yeah. Just by associating with devotees, we can become purified. So powerful. And especially, chant Hare Krishna. That is the panacea for everything. Everything is there in the holy name, Krishna's mercy. Okay, so I'll stop there.